Alright, this video is for Algebra 2L. This is for Thursday. You should have picked up a blue piece of paper when you walked in. My L kids, you're only going to do problems 1, 2, and 3, the ones that say L, and then the one that says both. And then you will complete page 4 in your packet. This is the second day of completing the square, so you've already seen it. We're going to look at number 1 first. Please pause it whenever you need to. Go back. The sheets will also be hanging on the board if you need to walk over there as well. So number 1, we want to solve this by completing the square. Remember, step number 1 when we're solving by completing the square is to make sure that the variable terms are on one side and the constants are on the other. So what I want to do is I need to get this 26 to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 26. So I have x squared minus 10x, and that's going to be equal to, remember I'm purposely leaving a space there, 8 minus 26, which is negative 18. Then I'm going to now divide both sides by a if that term is not 1, which notice here it's 1, so we don't need to divide by a. So the next step is then to complete the square by we're going to add our b, which is negative 10, divided by 2 squared, and then we're also going to do it to the other side, because whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. So there we go. After we do that, we now want to look at factoring that expression as a perfect square. So remember I showed you a shortcut. We're going to multiply this out. We're going to simplify. So x squared minus 10x plus 25 equals negative 18 plus 25. So from here now I'm going to use that shortcut that I showed you when we're factoring a perfect square. Remember, you're going to take the x, remember just a single x, so you're going to have x and then half of your b term, so minus 5 squared, and that is going to be equal to negative 18 plus 25. So negative 18 plus 25 is 7. Finally, we're going to take the square root of both sides. So I'm going to take the square root of this side and the square root of this side. But remember, when we take the square root, it's a plus or a minus as well. This is going to cancel. I'm going to have x minus 5 equal to plus or minus the square root of 7. Well, then we want to check and make sure that this 7 cannot be taken out and simplified the radical. So I'm going to find the factors of 7, which are 1 and 7. Well, neither one of those are a perfect square, so we're going to leave it like this. And there's no negative, so I don't have to factor out that I. So all I'm going to do is add 5 to both sides. So my answer is going to be x equals 5 plus or minus square root of 7. Remember, we want to split that because there's two answers. There's 5 plus the square root of 7 and 5 minus the square root of 7. So those are our answers to number 1. Any questions you have, just highlight it. When I come back, you can ask those questions then. Let's look at number 2. Number 2 is, we're going to solve this again by completing the square. So first thing, again, always make sure that your x's are on one side, your numbers are on the other. So I'm going to have x squared plus 14x, and remember we want to add that 38 to get it to the other side. So equals 38. Again, I left that space. I'm going to look, is this 1? Yes, it is. There's no number in front of it. So now all I've got to do is add 14 divided by 2 squared. And whatever I do to one side, I'm going to do to the other as well. So 14 divided by 2 squared. So now that I have that, then I'm going to have simplify down x squared plus 14x. 14 divided by 2 is 7. 7 squared is 49. So plus 49. Equals 38 plus 49. Alright, so then, now I'm going to look at this and I'm going to do x squared. Okay. But instead of x squared, I'm going to take it to single x because I want to factor this out. So x plus 7 squared equals 38 plus 49. So put that in your calculator, 38 plus 49, and you're going to get 87. All right. So then I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Again, that plus or minus, don't forget that piece. So I have x plus 7 equals plus or minus the square root of 87. And then I want to check and see if 87, if any of those could be factored out if they're in that list of perfect squares. So I know I have 1 and 87. 87 is not in that list. Go to your calculator, find your factors of 87. So go do that for me. You've got 3 and 29. And then from there, that's it. And none of those are perfect squares, so we're going to leave this like it is. And we're going to subtract 7, subtract 7. So I have x equals negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 87, which remember, guys, that's two different answers. So I have x equals negative 7 plus the square root of 87, and x equals negative 7 minus the square root of 87. And those are my two answers. Alright, so last one we're going to look at is this one right here, number 3. So first step again is to collect the variables on one side and the numbers on the other, which it's already done for us. Then I want to make sure that both sides, that leading coefficient, that x squared is 1. It's not, so I'm going to divide both sides by 8. So remember, we have to do both of these numbers. So 8 divided by 8 is x squared. 16 divided by 8, that is 2x. And then this is going to be equal to 42 divided by 8, which is actually going to be 21 over 4. Okay. So it gives me that fraction. I know you don't want to see that, but you're going to have to learn how to mess around with the fraction. It's okay. So then I'm going to add 2 over 2 squared, and I'm going to add 2 over 2 squared. So then I get x squared plus 2x plus 1 equals 21 over 4 plus 1. So now we're going to factor the x squared plus 2x plus 1, or it's a perfect square trinomial, so it's going to become x plus 1 squared equals 25 over 4. Remember, plug this in your calculator. Math, enter, enter, and it'll give you that fraction of 25 over 4. Then I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So I'm going to take the square root of this side, square root of this side, but remember when I take the square root, it's plus or minus. So I have x plus 1 equals, and here's the cool thing, guys. What's the square root of 25? Well, it's 5. So I've got plus or minus, and the square root of 4 is 2. So it's actually 5/2. You're not dealing with that square root again. So then all I'm going to do is subtract 1, so minus 1. So I have x equals negative 1 plus or minus 5/2. Plug this in the calculator. So plug in negative 1 plus 5/2 and negative 1 minus 5/2. And you should get that x equals 3/2 and x equals negative 7/2 as your answer. Just a reminder, you are going to have a quiz when we come back, or when I come back on Monday, so make sure you're studying this. You're going to have 2 quizzes to take, and so you want to make sure that you're studying this so that you know what's going on.